Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast. My name is Adam, and I'm actually doing a solo episode today for you guys today, but I'm really excited. Today's topic, it might actually challenge how you've been conditioned to think, and we're talking about why putting yourself first, but in the right ways, is really the only way you're ever going to have enough to give to others. Whether you're leading a business, raising kids, or simply just trying to keep your head above water, if you don't protect your own energy, you'll eventually run dry. So this one today is for anybody who's feeling stretched thin, maybe saying yes too much, or losing your own priorities while trying to please everyone else. So really excited to share this one with you guys today. We're going to jump right into it with the first of 5 parts that I put together. So this part 1 is all about redefining me driven. And what I mean by this is, growing up, a lot of us were taught that thinking about yourself was bad, being self-centered, being, maybe a little bit too focused on what you're doing as opposed to helping and serving others. But I want to tell you guys this from the bottom of my heart. There's a big difference between being self-absorbed and being self-aware. Let me say that again. There's a big difference between being self-absorbed and being self-aware. If you don't protect your time, your focus, and your health, there's no way you can ever give your best to anybody else. A good quote to remember on this one is, you can't pour from an empty cup. And as simple as that sounds, it is so true. Think about when you're on an airplane. What do they always tell you? They always tell you to put your oxygen mask on first before helping the person next to you. And, this is just such a simple, but very, impactful way to think about this when it comes to serving your own purpose and just getting to a point where you can be filled up yourself before pouring into others. The best way for me to close out this first point is, life, leadership, relationships, all of this stuff, they all follow that exact same principle. This isn't something that only applies to work or only applies to your personal life. You really can't apply this to everything. So why, yes, you might be, good on this front with maybe your home life, maybe you're struggling at work, and this could be a way that you could potentially make a little bit of an improvement this week if you start to focus a little bit again on serving yourself first and just getting to a healthy state of mind as well as physically. So that's the first part. The second part I want to talk about, though, is I think something that I've dealt with a lot in my past, and I think a lot of others, maybe you as well, and that's talking about saying yes too much. When yes can become a problem. What happens a lot of times, and this is something that I'm speaking on from personal experience, is that burnout often comes from having too many yeses, committing and saying yes to too many things. We all agree to things a lot of times out of guilt, fear, or even just obligation. We want to please the other person or the other party that's inviting us to do something. And, I just want to bring up just a personal example of this with me, I'm a people pleaser. I like to always, if I can, help out and serve others and commit to whatever it is that they're asking for my help with. And my help with could be something as simple as just inviting me to something. And I don't know, this is something that is really hard to master, and I'm still nowhere near that point, but understanding that it's okay to say no. So yes is something that I think is really focused on and always looked as a positive, while no is always looked at as a negative. And no can also be a positive, meaning that by saying no, that can positively affect you by protecting your peace and protecting your limited amount of time and energy. Every yes that you're saying to somebody else, another way to look at this is that's really, you're saying no to something for yourself. A really good way to combat this is having a very clear and a very, very structured list of what's the most important to you, what are your non-negotiables, where do you want to put all of your energy and your time and your effort into. And if these obligations, or at least these invitations, aren't serving any of those things on your list, it's probably not worth doing. Maybe it's worth passing on that. That cup of coffee that you've been invited to go get on Tuesday with maybe a peer, somebody that's in your industry, is it really serving you? Is that 2 hours going to move the needle in the right direction? Is it going to help you improve whatever it is that you're trying to build? Or is it just kind of busy work? Is it just wasting time? And I don't want that to come off the wrong way. There's still plenty of value in social interactions with other people, but really having a clear, guideline that you can have for yourself on what is and what isn't serving you, and being okay and comfortable with saying no. Another way to think about this is no is a complete sentence. Let me say that again. No is a complete sentence. No explanations are required. Get okay with yourself and be okay with saying no and not feeling obligated to follow that up with an excuse or a reason behind it. It's a sentence. No. Yes, you might think that that's going to come off as harsh or cold or maybe come off the wrong way. If you're talking in the right way to the right person and they know you to a point where they can understand the reasoning behind this, it's going to be okay, I promise. Another thing to think about with this is the ripple effect. One wrong yes could mean skipping your workout, maybe some of that quality family time, or just that time you need for yourself for that mental reset. Again, having that ability to understand what's the most important, what's really moving the needle in the right direction, and only saying yes to things that serve that purpose. Everything else can go to the side and not be a commitment. You can say no to it. And it's also okay to say, maybe later, or maybe I'll, reach out to me again next month. I know I can't do it this month. I got some other goals I'm really focused on, but, reach out again next week just so I, have another opportunity to connect with you. There's ways to still do this in a way that is respectful and you're not, totally burning a bridge where they're never going to invite you to do whatever it is again in the future. So the third part that I want to share is just some warning signs that you do need to reset. So if any of these are kind of speaking to you right now, then that's a good signal, a good sign that yes, you might be an example of needing to really put a little bit more energy back into yourself before serving those around you. So one example of this would be if you're starting to feel really resentful after agreeing to something. You get invited to get into a coffee next Tuesday, and starting 3 days before that, you start getting kind of resentful and man, I really don't want to go to that coffee. Well, why did you commit to it in the first place? Having ability to say no can avoid all of that and keep your energy protected and working on things that matter. If your body's feeling really run down, if your sleep and your mood and your energy are all feeling off, that's also a good indication that you might need to be realigning and focusing a little bit more on yourself again. If you can't remember the last time you actually did something for yourself, that's a very clear warning sign that you need to reset. Or maybe you're just starting to snap a little bit at people. My girlfriend and I use this word sometimes. We're feeling hangry, meaning we're hungry to the point where you kind of get angry. I can relate to that also from this perspective, where if you're just so overwhelmed and you're committing to too much, I can kind of get a little moody in that example too. So maybe that's the case. And if you're feeling that way, maybe that's an indication you need to reset. All these, they're not weaknesses. They're really just signals to pause and reset. Usually it's not a complete breakdown. It's usually more of just a boundary problem, just not setting those really clear boundaries and protecting your peace. So that fourth part that I want to share is now a little bit more tactical ways to protect your energy. So maybe I said a few things on that last point that are really speaking to you. You're realizing, yeah, I do need to take a little bit better care of myself and focus on that reset. Well, here's a few ways that you can do that and really protect your energy. So the first one, I love this one. It's blocking out time on your calendar that is non-negotiable, but it's for personal things. A lot of us, we think of our calendar as only work related. Any work meetings, anything that we need to remember that's tied to our careers, that's what we're putting in our calendars. I'd like to really completely turn this point upside down and give you something to consider. You start out on your calendar, putting things into your calendar that are the most important non-negotiables. And a lot of these are personal things that Wednesday date night that you're going to have with your spouse. That's a non-negotiable. Put that on your calendar. Don't just talk about it. Have it on your calendar as a scheduled, task or event, just like it is with meetings and other work-related stuff. Another great one would be your workouts, maybe even some goals that you have, like reading 10 minutes a day or creative time to work on something new you're trying to get figured out. Maybe you want to learn how to play the piano. Put 30 minutes of, rehearsed piano on your calendar. All of this can really help with that weekly reset. Another thing that I think is really important to consider, another actionable, takeaway for this is saying yes really slowly. Buy time before you commit. So a few examples of this is just a way to just restructure how you're responding, your verbal cues that you're telling the person that's inviting you to something. Try something like, well, let me think about that. Or, I'm really at capacity right now. Can I get back to you tomorrow and give you an answer then? by kind of kicking the can down the road, that at least allows you the ability to really stop, think, and really consider, is this something that's going to benefit my energy and my peace and help me grow? Or is this something that maybe is better off just, declining for the time being? Another really good tip for you guys is also to audit your commitments at the end of every week. And if that feels like too cumbersome, start off with it every month. And what I mean by this is at the end of the month, pull up your calendar, go back through it, and just look at it on a day or a weekly basis. And anything that's on there that was taking up your time, that meetings that you actually, did that you didn't back out on, or that you didn't miss, or they didn't miss, anything that you actually did, think through each of those and just think about it. Was this serving me, or was it just something that I did out of habit? Is it really benefiting me? Was that weekly Zoom call that I've been on every week for the last 6 months, is that really serving me? Or maybe I could use that time better somewhere else. And then the last point that I'll share is really, really important on this one too. Surround yourself with other people that are going to respect your no, other people that also understand this concept. The Pareto principle is one of my favorites. It's also commonly known as the 80-20 rule. And there's a lot of different ways you can look at this. One of them is when it's about just productivity, you spend 20% of what you put your time in really creates and produces 80% of the results. That's one way to look at the Pareto principle. But another one is looking at it from the people that you're surrounding yourself with. The 5 people that you put the most energy and time into, the people that you spend the most amount of time with, those are all the people that are going to be influencing you the most. So really be intentional about who those people are, who you're spending your time with. And those people hopefully are going to also have that same mindset and same understanding that you do, where it's okay to say no. And they're going to understand that the reason is nothing against them. It's nothing personal. It's because you've got bigger things that you're working on, and they're going to understand that, I promise. Okay. And then the last and final thing that I prepared for you that I really wanted to share as kind of this final point is talking about how you can serve better after you fueled yourself up. So just kind of tying this all back in on one final point. So once you take care of your needs, you can totally, absolutely, indefinitely always give your best to others. And I'm just using as many adjectives as I can there because I think this is just such an important concept to really consider, and everybody can get better at this, myself included. Once you've been really practicing this and learning how to say no and learning how to really put all of your energy into what matters, you're going to start showing up. You're going to be more present. You're going to be more generous. You're going to be more effective. You're going to be more creative. All of these powerful, positive attributes can all be done simply by respecting your own personal energy and making sure that you're taking care of yourself. It's just crazy how easy it is for us to kind of give ourselves this lower bar, this lower standard than others. If I have somebody that I'm meeting to go work out with in the morning, my co-host for the podcast, Ben and I work out together every morning. And if I didn't have Ben there, I probably wouldn't go nearly as often. And that's because for some strange reason, I know a lot of us are like this, we almost respect other people more than ourselves. So if I'm really trying to hold myself accountable, that's great. But when I have somebody else holding me accountable, I'm at an even higher level there. So this is just, an example of how important it is to always protect yourself first. It's not selfish, it's sustainable. Burnout doesn't come from doing a lot. It comes from doing the wrong things for way too long. And that is just something that I think all of us can really think about and do these occasional audits on our own personal lives and really be just honest with each other or I should say honest with ourselves about what's really important to us, what matters the most, and putting all of our time and energy into that. We're going to be happier. We're going to be more productive. And overall, it's just going to be a much better place to live life from. So you guys, you can't build a meaningful life, a business, or a family if you're always drained. So protect your time, protect your energy. This is not optional. It's responsible. Let's change the stigma around being selfish and start focusing more on being selfless. So this is your permission slip, you guys. Pause, reset, say no when you need to. And the challenge for the week is to try and apply this somewhere in your life. Schedule one thing this week that's just for you, nobody else. Some of us, that might have been something that we haven't done in a week, maybe a month. maybe a year. I know a lot of you guys that are maybe listening today that are parents, you put your kids first. You don't have any level of this maybe directly on yourself. So the more you can just, really give yourself that gift of that time, of that peace, of that energy, whatever it is that you really want to get better at for yourself, give yourself that gift. And this week, schedule time and make it happen. So if this resonated with you guys today, hopefully it did. Share it with a friend. We'd love to help grow the show as much as we can. The only way to do that is by having our great viewers and our listeners of the show just share it with anybody else that they think might get some value out of this. So hopefully you guys did. Hopefully somebody else can as well that you know. So please share the show. And as always, don't forget, we have full video versions every week on YouTube, as well as all episodes are available on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, all other major podcast platforms. New episodes drop every single Friday. And with that, I hope you guys have a great week, a very positive, productive week. And I'm excited to hear how this goes for you. So shoot me a DM, shoot me a message on social media. I would love to know just how this might be affecting your lives. And hopefully a week later, you can report back to me and say that you made at least a little bit of an improvement on this. So you guys, hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next week on a brand new episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast. I'll see you then.